Tonight, a conflict that many feared for years is no longer playing out in the shadows. Missiles are flying, drones are being intercepted, oil tankers are on alert, and the world's most volatile region is once again at the center of global attention. But here is the uncomfortable truth. This is not just another Middle Eastern flare-up. This confrontation between Iran, the United States, and Israel has the potential to redraw alliances, shock the global economy, and directly affect households here in the United Kingdom. And the real question is not whether this war matters to you, it's how much it is already costing you. Over recent weeks, tensions that had been simmering between Tehran, Washington, and Tel Aviv escalated into open military exchanges. Israel intensified strikes targeting Iranian-linked military infrastructure, arguing it was acting in self-defense against growing threats from Tehran and its regional proxies. The United States, while insisting it does not seek a full-scale war, increased its military presence in the region, deploying additional naval assets, air defense systems, and strategic bombers as a deterrent. Iran responded with missile launches, drone attacks, and warnings that any further aggression would be met with what it described as decisive retaliation. But here is what makes this moment different. This is no longer confined to proxy groups or covert operations. Direct exchanges, even if limited and carefully calibrated, have taken place. And when three powerful actors are involved, Iran, Israel, and the United States, the margin for miscalculation becomes dangerously thin. So what is the current situation on the ground? Israel has reportedly targeted facilities it believes are linked to Iran's missile development, weapons storage, and command structures. These strikes are presented by Israeli officials as preemptive, designed to prevent what they describe as an existential threat. Iran, for its part, claims it has absorbed significant damage too. Infrastructure, including military sites and key personnel losses, but insists its strategic capabilities remain intact. Casualties have been reported on all sides, though exact numbers remain disputed and difficult to independently verify in real time. Now pause for a moment and consider this. Every missile fired, every air defense interception, every retaliatory strike carries not only military consequences but political ones, because neither side can afford to look weak. The United States has faced attacks on regional bases housing American personnel. While Washington has confirmed injuries and some losses in previous escalations, it has also emphasized that its primary objective is deterrence, not invasion. The message from the Pentagon has been consistent: protect us forces, defend Israel, and prevent the conflict from spiraling into a broader regional war. Israel has suffered civilian disruption and military pressure as Iranian drones and missiles attempt to penetrate its multi-layered air defense systems. Even when intercepted, these attacks create anxiety, economic slowdown, and political strain. Iran, meanwhile, has endured precision strikes on facilities and the loss of senior figures, tied to its security apparatus that carries not only operational consequences but symbolic ones, because perception of strength is central to Tehran's strategy. And here's the critical turning point. This war is as much about strategy as it is about firepower. For Israel, the strategy appears clear: maintain qualitative military superiority, strike decisively but in a controlled manner, signal strength to deter future aggression, and, crucially, prevent Iran from expanding its regional influence or advancing military capabilities that could shift the balance of power permanently. For the United States, the strategy is layered: support Israel, protect American assets, keep shipping lanes open, avoid a drawn-out ground conflict, and manage escalation so that it does not draw in other regional powers. Washington understands that another large-scale Middle Eastern war would be politically and economically costly, particularly in an election cycle and amid fragile global markets. But what about Iran? Iran's strategy is asymmetrical. Tehran knows it cannot match the combined conventional military power of the United States and Israel head-to-head. Instead, it leverages geography, regional alliances, missile capabilities, and economic choke points. It applies pressure indirectly, raising the cost of confrontation for its adversaries. It signals that any attack on Iranian soil will reverberate across the region through allied groups, cyber operations, and threats to critical infrastructure. And this is where the United Kingdom, and indeed the entire world, becomes part of the story, because roughly a fifth of the world's oil supply passes through one narrow stretch of water, the Strait of Hormuz. Iran sits on one side of it. If that corridor is disrupted, even partially, the consequences ripple instantly across global energy markets. Oil prices do not wait for wars to be officially declared. They react to risk. Even the hint of instability in the Gulf can send crude prices surging. For Britain, which relies on global energy markets despite domestic production, that translates into higher fuel costs, increased transport expenses, and potentially renewed inflationary pressure. So ask yourself this: what happens if oil spikes above $100 a barrel again? Petrol prices rise, heating costs increase, businesses face higher logistics expenses, food prices edge upwards because transportation becomes more expensive, airlines adjust fares, inflation, which central banks have struggled to contain, may tick upwards once more, and suddenly a conflict thousands of miles away begins to affect weekly shopping bills in Manchester, Birmingham, or London. But oil is only one piece of the puzzle. Global markets react sharply to uncertainty. Investors shift money into safe haven assets like gold and the US dollar. Stock indices fluctuate. Pension funds feel the tremors. Insurance premiums for shipping through the Gulf increase. If vessels perceive risk, some may reroute, adding time and cost to global supply chains that are only just recovering from previous disruptions. And here is another dimension that often goes overlooked: cyber warfare. Modern conflicts are not limited to physical battlefields. Infrastructure, financial systems, and communications networks are increasingly targeted digitally. Even rumors of cyber retaliation can unsettle markets and governments alike. Now consider the human cost. In Israel, communities face sirens, shelters, and the psychological toll of uncertainty. In Iran, civilians endure economic strain compounded by sanctions and now heightened instability. Across the region, neighboring countries brace for spillover effects. Refugee flows, security threats, and diplomatic tensions could all intensify if escalation continues, and this leads us to the most pressing question of all: how far could this go? Neither Washington nor Tehran publicly claims to want a full-scale war. Israel insists it is defending itself. Iran insists it is responding to aggression, but wars are not always the product of desire. Sometimes they are the result of momentum, a miscalculated strike, a misinterpreted signal, a domestic political decision designed to show strength that triggers an unintended response. For the UK government, the balancing act is delicate. Britain maintains strong ties with the United States and Israel, yet also seeks regional stability and protection of trade routes. Any escalation that threatens maritime security could require diplomatic engagement or even naval coordination alongside allies to safeguard shipping. And let's not ignore the diplomatic chessboard. Major powers such as China and Russia watch closely. Energy markets affect them too. Regional actors, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, assess their positions carefully. Some may call for restraint. Others may quietly reinforce their defenses. Alliances can shift subtly in times like these. Now imagine a scenario where the Strait of Hormuz faces temporary closure. Even a short disruption could remove millions of barrels of oil per day from the market. Strategic reserves might be tapped. Emergency meetings would be held. Governments would attempt to reassure markets, but volatility would be unavoidable. And here is the broader implication. Global recovery remains fragile. After years of pandemic shock, supply chain disruption, and inflationary cycles, economies are vulnerable. A sustained Middle Eastern conflict could slow growth, dampen investor confidence, and complicate monetary policy decisions for central banks, including the Bank of England. So while missiles dominate headlines, economics may ultimately define the outcome. There is also the domestic political dimension within each country involved. Leaders under pressure sometimes adopt firmer rhetoric. Public opinion can harden rapidly in times of perceived threat. That makes de-escalation politically harder, even if strategically desirable. And here's a sobering thought: wars in this region have historically lasted longer than initially predicted. What begins as limited strikes can evolve into protracted standoffs. What is framed as deterrence can slide into sustained confrontation, and every additional week compounds economic cost. Yet diplomacy remains a possibility. Back-channel communications, mediated talks, and international pressure can all play a role in preventing worst-case scenarios. The question is whether cooler heads prevail before escalation crosses a point of no return. For viewers here in the UK, the key takeaway is this. You may not see the explosions, you may not hear the sirens, but you will feel the impact if this conflict intensifies through fuel prices, through food costs, through market volatility, through geopolitical uncertainty. And so we return to where we began. This is not just a regional dispute, it is a test of deterrence, alliance cohesion, economic resilience, and diplomatic skill. It is a reminder that in an interconnected world, geography offers less insulation than ever before. As the situation continues to evolve, one thing is certain: the next move by any of the three players, Iran, Israel, or the United States, will shape not only the Middle East, but potentially the trajectory of the global economy in the months ahead. And the most unsettling reality of all? The world is watching, waiting, and hoping that strategy outweighs emotion before the costs become far greater than anyone is prepared to bear. This is only the beginning of the story.